Hey guys, welcome back to Jitterbooter Aquatics with Andrew. Today we're going to be talking about how to clean a planted tank, meaning cleaning glass, doing water changes, gravel vacuuming, all that type of thing. So if you're interested in that, make sure to stay tuned for the video. And if you like the content, give it a big thumbs up, smash that like button, and if you guys like a lot of the content, or particularly this video, you can always subscribe and, stay up to date with what I'm doing and all my aquariums. So with that, we'll get into the video itself. So when it comes to cleaning your planted tank, there are a couple of reasons to why you want to do water changes and things of that nature. One is that you have too high of nitrates. In a planted tank, you usually don't think you're going to have high nitrates, but that can come along either through excess feeding still or through heavier fertilization with your fertilizers you're putting in. So you still need to be testing your water and doing all those types of things to see what your actual water quality is and whether or not you have too high of nitrates. So you might actually need to remove some of that nitrates from the water and sort of reset the system. Another reason why you want to do a water change or do all these things is because the water that we have, particularly for me in Kentucky, has calcium, among other things, in the water itself that the plants need and doesn't necessarily come in high amounts either through the fertilizers I put in or other things. So in order for me to replenish those calcium ions that are being used up by the plants, I need to be doing water changes to replenish that to make the plants actually be able to grow rather than allowing the algae to grow. Another thing that before we get into the actual video itself is that you're not going to actually see me do gravel vacuuming because you don't want to do gravel vacuuming in a planted tank. You want to be letting all those poop and waste, be detritus, broken down plants, excess food that's already sunk down to the bottom is just organic material, break down in there because that organic material actually has a lot of nutrients still within it. And if you were removing that from your tank via a deep gravel vac and getting all that gunk out of there, you're going to be removing all those potential nutrients that could be broken down by the bacteria in an aerobic environment like your planted tank is in that first couple inch or so of substrate, and it'll be releasing that nutrients back into the water column for you. So you're going to see a couple of things in action and just some quick things. Just scraping your glass can make a huge difference in terms of how it looks. You don't necessarily have to do it when you're doing a water change, but just it's a lot easier to do it when you do a water change because you can scrape off the glass and come in and suck out all of that water so that that algae isn't giving another spot in the tank to go colonize and set up, but rather is being removed from the tank. So with that, we'll get into the video. So you can see here, this is a very dirtied glass with a lot of green spot algae, and we're going to be using a actual razor blades to remove it because you can't really remove it with much else besides that. And if this was your main viewing angle of your tank, this would make it look really bad. Like it just looks meh right now, like worse than meh. It just looks bleh. So we'll transition over to seeing what the front side of this tank looks like and how I normally view it. And I'm sorry for the glare as I move around here. But you can see that this looks a whole lot better just by changing that angle of, from dirtied glass over there, which you can see on the right hand side, to this nice clean, relatively clean glass in the front. So just even, keeping up with your algae cleaning on the front panel can be a huge difference in terms of your planted tank and how it looks to people when they view it, or even when you're viewing it yourself. So like I was saying before, the green spot algae in here is really difficult to get off without a razor blade. And if you have an acrylic tank, you definitely don't want to do this because you're going to put great gashes in your acrylic tank. But since I have glass, I can go ahead and do this. And you'll be able to see as I go down the line that I'm basically creating of all that algae. And the reason why we're doing this at the very beginning of the water change is so that way as you're pulling water out of the tank, you're going to also be pulling out all this algae from your tank. So I'm just going to keep on going through and scraping all of this off, and then you'll be able to see what it looks like from before to what it looks like now. Another trick you can use to see where you missed your green spot algae is taking an old card like this one, like my old student ID here, and using that white background to start looking. So you can see over here in the corner all of that I missed, and I can then go back in and actually look to see where I missed and actually come back in and scrape it rather than having to maneuver around the tank and seeing where I missed it from different angles. You can just use a white background to see that difference. So rather than creating a siphon by sucking on the actual end of the tube, what you can do is put the end into your container, go underwater, fill the entire tube up with water, take it above water, and you'll see water coming out. You dip it back down, and now you have a siphon going as you see water draining out. So once you have that started, you can control the amount of water either by cranking it like this and releasing it, or putting your thumb over the end. So I'm just going to be cranking it this entire time. So when you're actually gravel vacuuming, you don't want to be going physically into the gravel. You don't want to be going in there and actually lifting all that stuff out. You're just going to be going over the surface of the water and just removing all of the stuff that is at the very top of the substrate, rather than what is, you know, deep in the substrate itself, because all that gunk that you have in there is going to be beneficial for you in terms of your planted tank. And if you guys have shrimp in your tank like I do here, and you're worried about, you know, sucking them up, you can also, you know, hover above, or you can start pulling water from the middle of your water column so that there's no chance of you sucking up your actual shrimp. Now that I've gotten all the algae removed from the side, I'm going to come in here and finish siphoning off the rest of that water, and we're going to do about a 25% water change in the tank today, so we're probably going to take it about down to here so. And I'm just going to start my siphon back up again. And finish cleaning up the rest of the tank. And one thing is you can do, if you have larger pieces of algae in here, you can actually go in there, work it off with your fingers, and basically feed it into your siphon, so that way you aren't, you know, running around with your tube in your tank wasting a lot of water. You can be very specific in targeting different pieces of algae that you don't want in your tank. So one other thing that you want to be concerned about is you might be able to hear the water starting to go in the back of my tank. That's because the filter is starting to get to right where its intake is. So if you're going to be doing a long water change, you're going to want to make sure you unplug that so that you don't burn out your pump. And you also want to make sure that you are paying attention to where the water level is in comparison to your heater, because you also don't want your heater to become exposed to the air and start overheating and end up frying your tank. Once we have our water drained to the specified height that we want it to be, you're going to want to add water back into the tank. And there are two ways you can add water back into the tank. You can either use aged tap water, which is just tap water that has been sitting out for a couple of days, either by itself or with an air stone to gas off all the chlorine. If you have chloramine in your water, you don't want to do that, because the chloramine will not gas off and you'll still have the issue with the chloramines. So if you have chloramines, the other option for you is to use a dechlorinator, a water dechlorinator, to get rid of all of those chemicals, or to neutralize them within the tank, and then add that water into your tank. And in doing that, you also want to make sure that the water you're pulling out of your tap is going to be of a comparable water temperature to in your tank. So just testing it with your finger is a pretty good way to get a pretty accurate water temperature. If you want to err on the side of caution, I'd say go lower, cooler, because your heater can heat it back up, but you don't have a chiller in your tank, so you can't cool it back down as easily. And when you actually are adding your water in your tank, you either want to have something that has a lip on it, so that it's just a gentle drizzle into your tank over a piece of hardscape, or you want to have another hand, so you lean it like this, and you put your other hand underneath, and just drizzle it in this way. And you're doing this so that you don't disrupt your substrate, and that you don't pick up any of your plants that you have in there. And it's just a way to minimize the disruption to the plants. So now I'll go fill up the rest of the buckets with the dechlorinator and the water, and we'll get this filled up the rest of the way. So now that I've added all the water back in, you can see from this side how much of a difference it makes compared to earlier. And you might think that, oh my gosh, my tank is so horrible and it's all done for and I can't recover from it. But you know, if you just start with just the glass and just clean the glass, And you can go from looking like that before where it just looked terrible to looking like this where it actually looks a lot more presentable and a lot more managed and well kept. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and if there's anything that I left out or should include or is rather important that I didn't include, just let me know in the comments below, and we can rectify any issues down there and help people with cleaning out their planted aquariums, and then just make sure that we can enjoy them and keep all of our animals nice and happy and healthy. And with that, I hope you guys have a blessed day. See ya.